What's up, world, and welcome back to the Global Frequency. I am your host, Nefarious. Frequency Girl is mysteriously not here. Actually, it's not a mystery at all. She is busy fulfilling the book as we speak. She is upstairs, sweating, working in the sweatshop, fulfilling those books. But tonight, we're going to have, instead, Aldous on the farm. And when he arrives, we'll have Steve Dye, touch down and join us to talk about Rocket Magazine Mission Number 2, now available on Indiegogo. Aldous, what's up, my dude? How you doing tonight?
Not much, man. Thank you so much for having us on the Frequency tonight. And I'm kind of shocked, personally, that you're forcing Frequency Girl to work like that. Why not just go down to the local orphanage and get some free labor?
The orphanage burned down.
Oh,
I'm not saying I was involved, but it did. It burned down.
So you've got a bunch
dead
of
orphans
displaced?
Everywhere. They're not displaced. They're charred bodies. It's awful.
I see.
We got D-Wag with us. We also got Eric Grant. Thanks for tuning in, my guy. We've got Will from Creators Outlet with us. We've got the Art and Times of Jay Ryan, who just launched a channel. Guys, if you haven't checked it out, definitely go over there. It's brand new. It's shiny like chrome. We should go over there and defile it together. We got you in the chat. Look at that. You're so happy to be here. Thank you for tuning in as well. We got Mo Biggs, we got Aerith, we got Hicks Villain, and I think we're good for now. So like I said, we'll just kind of hang out waiting for Steve and maybe shoot the shit, and you can answer some of the preliminary questions. I don't want to steal his thunder. I know it's kind of like his magazine, but you are a smooth talker, and you're a charming guy, so it's fun to talk to you. You can start off by telling us a little bit about yourself. I know we want to keep the mystery of
yes.
Aldous on the farm just off Orwell Lane. Like, do you actually live off Orwell Lane?
I have there is a section of my property that has a registered street that is Orwell Lane. Yes.
Would you live at like 1984 Orwell Lane?
No, I do not.
Do you have an animal farm in the back?
I do not.
Do you? No? Okay.
No. Longtime comic fan, kind of obviously started the same way so many of my generation did, which is moving right, into the spinner rack. It's going to the grocery store with mom, and you'd beg and plead instead of walking around the store with her to just chill out by the spinner rack and check out books. And if you were good and she was in a good mood, maybe grab a few. And, that evolved. The spinner rack kind of slowly went away and started going to the LCS. I had Marvel books come into my mailbox via subscriptions that I'd get for my birthday and Christmas. Drifted away, as people often do, as that later middle school, high school period hit. And then, even then was still occasionally grabbing a graphic novel or something, and then kind of got back into it a little bit in college. Kind of my eyes were opened with some of the stuff that's out there that was I hadn't seen or wasn't allowed to read when I was living, even at home, because, you can't do that. That's, not for you. And just kind of started dabbling. And it wasn't until my mid-20s I really started getting back into it, and kind of started building my own collection, buying collections, started small, just a couple short boxes at a time, sorting through, keeping what I wanted to keep and flip the rest.
I mean, that's a very, straightforward way about getting into comics. It's like mercenary almost, you get the appreciation for it, you enjoy everything, and then you make a business out of it. It's kind of like you could turn comics into your life.
It's just a little side business, and it kind of self-funds itself if you're shrewd and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I
don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not shrewd, so I could never do it. Mo says, Neff, do not let these two go off on tangents. And Aldous, if a certain film genre is brought up, mute them both.
Yes. Yes. Steve and I are not allowed to speak about Westerns if Mo is in the show.
No. And that was exactly what Amanda B was was commenting on. She said, "Can we discuss what everyone's favorite Western is?" So yeah, the jokes are already flowing. I was gonna ask you what your favorite Western is, but I know we're just gonna bleed viewers that way. Uh, Bull Ninja James Ryan says, "What does all this think of Sam Spade's radio shows?"
Oh, they're excellent. They're a little more tame than a lot of the stuff I like listening to, mainly just because it was more of a, for lack of a better term, a purely commercialized product. It didn't really necessarily have the tie-in that you get with the Shadow, or the passion that like Elliot Lewis brought to Voyage of the Scarlet Queen, or even like moving into some of the comedy shows. It didn't have that quality that you see like when you're listening to like a Burns and Allen, where it's just the whippy repertoire, or even some of like the other stuff like Jack Benny's radio show or a lot of those other ones. There's
Yeah,
and then when you look at like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no. You're the guest, please.
But then when you look at like like the CBS Mystery Theater, or and this is all later post 40 stuff, Suspense. Suspense is an amazing one because, or even X minus zero, because those two series in particular were basically pooling from contract writers. So you get some great pulp sci-fi guys from the 50s, 60s, and even 70s that were writing episodes for that. And X minus one in particular, I think there's 2 episodes that Rod Serling wrote that kind of are used as the foundation for later Twilight Zones. And the same is true for Suspense. There's quite a few Bradbury short stories that he did radio plays for and then evolved into short story scripts for novellas.
Hojo says, "Hail, fucking panel, pulp it up," and they're still going on about the westerns thing in the chat. And I was going to say, your channel also. I mean, you bring us these golden age radio shows, and they're great. I listened to the first 2 Voyage of the Scarlet Queen, and I was very surprised. I mean, I grew up in an era after the days of radio, you know what I mean? So I didn't really have the appreciation for it that, folks like yourself who are cultured and intelligent and, erudite and articulate do. I was watching Thundercats. Fucking sue me.
Oh, but, dude, and I grew up on all that stuff too. I've got a massive appreciation for 80s cartoons, and one of the things that I was devastated with. Just a moment.
Eric says X minus 0 equals medium male. Oh boy, man, I love those medium male jokes, dude.
But no, so when you talk about like the 80s cartoon stuff, yes, I mean, I absolutely. But the love for radio came when I was working with my grandpa in the barn on the tractor or the Ford, because you always needed to work on the Ford, and all those old radio programs were always on they were on the radio. That's what he was listening to. If it wasn't a Tigers game, it was the Shadow, or the worst days were when it was just the AM news radio NPR, and it's like, oh, can we listen to the Shadow, Grandpa? And just developed an appreciation for it, and kind of lost that at some point, and then really with when like early 2000s with YouTube is where I kind of rediscovered some of it, and then the Internet Archive. And there's a lot of archivists out there. I kind of joined that community and cleaning up audio.
He keeps going in and out because there's actually some G-men there raiding the farm as we speak, trying to find his hidden rocket.
Yeah, sorry about that. I apologize for that. But yeah, so developed a appreciation for it, and then just like comics, there's people that are trying to keep the old stuff alive and keep the memory alive. And so, you'd spend your time, you might get a really bad copy of a radio program, and you spend your time mixing it while you're watching a show with your wife and cleaning up and taking the pops and the cracks out. And that's really what I try to do with all the Shadow episodes that I upload.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, and they're crystal clear, dude. They're great. I know Hojo was just saying that he listened to his favorite one today and that your channel is awesome. And speaking of that, let's say hello to Hojo. Let's also say hi to Peter Retro Palmiotti. And we got the one and only Amanda B, who said, "Hail the missing freak girl," and she's missing because she's working, but I think she's watching. So maybe she can type in the chat. No, keep those fingers busy doing what they're supposed to be doing, putting books in boxes. Ollie's with us as well. He says, "Hey, Peter," but he said hey to me first. Ojo says, Mo Biggs, I was using my hoop and stick while the laundry dried on the line. You know, the old fashioned stuff. He says, I just wanted to come in and say hi, what's up? I'm going to be on Critical Blast at 8 o'clock if anybody wants to pop in. Yeah, man, we're wrapping up around 8, so I'll just pop right over and say what's up. Love to see you and Will shoot the shit. Hey, and we've got Michael Bancroft with us. Yo, mad lads and mad lass. She's not here, she's working, but I'll be twice as mad to make up for it. So we've been shooting the shit. Like I said, Mo doesn't want me saying anything about shooting because we'll get into the westerns. But we should talk a little bit about the magazine we're here to talk about
sure.
while we hopefully let Steve Dye have enough time to touch down to talk to us. So how did this idea crystallize? Like, what was the impetus behind putting together a comic book magazine?
Well, Steve and I, we met in the chats. I mean, that's where it all starts, right? So much like all of us, we started listening to Zach, and you kind of notice people in the chat that have similar views, and you kind of end up doing that crosstalk that's so popular in chats where you're having a conversation in addition to commenting on the actual content of the show or video. And ended up just starting to talk about what we loved. We both got a mutual appreciation for especially older style comics. Love story. Steve's got a background in journalism, and as an editor, I've got a background in not journalism, but I've done editing, and always loved the foundation principles of the story. At a young age, I was really fascinated by Joseph Campbell's work in The Hero of a Thousand Faces and breaking down that story to the monomyth. And we talked about that. And we kind of talked about how that's lacking in modern comics, kind of, following in parallel with what Zach was talking about at the time. And then, it kind of moves into, okay, well, we got this great burgeoning indie space that has these creators, all this stuff. Well, we've got good books now, but what else was it about comics and that scene that we liked? Well, we liked the characters and the conversations. But man, Steve really dug Wizard. That was his book. And, Epic Illustrated and Heavy Metal were mine. And we were kind of thinking like, man, you've got all these great artists out there, but everybody's doing full-size books, and people aren't talking on YouTube, but they're not talking about the things that, man, I want them to answer. And when I say that, it's, okay, we all know Billy Tucci's story, and we all know Billy Tucci's Crusade Comics and She, but you ever heard the story about, Billy Tucci used to jump out of airplanes when he was in the military, and when he was working on, all these other projects, he was awarded a medal by France. Personally, Billy Tucci was awarded a medal by France. And
I had no idea.
You've got Andy Smith. Everybody knows that Andy Smith was in the industry for a long, long time. But what brought him to comics in the first place? What brought guys like Dan Fraga as a minor? I mean, he was 15, 16 when he started doing this. Not only do you have a mediocre talent there, but you have somebody that, man, there's got to be a drive. And what was behind that drive? And that's kind of what Rocket slides in, is it's that part of Wizard where you get kind of to turn the page on the creator and read a little bit about them and get to know them in their own words. And then you can turn 2 pages after that, and there'll be an 8-page short story from another up-and-coming creator. And that short story might be a preview of an upcoming book, or it might just be an encapsulated 8-page story that just doesn't fit anywhere else, but it's something that they wanted to tell. And sometimes, at least in my experience, and this is why I loved Epic Illustrated and Wizard, or Epic Illustrated and Heavy Metal, it's why I love those books, is because you got something that was like way out of left field from certain guys. Taking a step even further back in the history catalog, that's what Creepy and Eerie were all about. It was, just good short stories. And some of those were callbacks to books that were pre-Comics Code from the late 40s and 50s. Some weren't. I mean, there's some great Wally Wood and Steve Ditko stuff in there that just you wouldn't expect. It blows you away when you see a horror book or a horror story by Steve Ditko that's just visceral, because it's just so not his classic style that you've kind of grown accustomed to with his Marvel work.
So, who is the intended audience? I know with so much existing in the indie space, you're trying to reach the readers who appreciate indie books. But what about new readers? How are you going to bring them in? Like, if nobody's heard of Billy Tucci or Andy Smith, how are you going to make the magazine appeal to them?
Well, that's the rub, right? I mean, that's the challenge that
Right.
everybody faces. I can develop a great product, but if I don't have the perch or the marketing machine behind it, then nobody's gonna know. And I mean, to a degree, Steve's got much more experience in that than I do. I'm in the technical field and side of things, so my work promotes itself. If I do a good job, then word of mouth
Nobody knows.
naturally
Yeah.
gets me more clientele. And so that's we're at the mercy of what we've got. What we do know is this is something that we're invested in and we want to do, and it's there's a little bit of learning along the way because neither one of us has done well. We've got one issue under our belt that I helped a little bit with, and then I'm a little more involved on this one. And it's trial and error. Did this work? Does this work? Does this work? Did that work? And it's just kind of trying to find where can we find it. We're branching out. We're trying to talk to podcasts. We're trying to do YouTube shows. We're promoting as much as we can. It's a secondary hobby at the end of the day as well, and that's it's time consuming. I've got a family. Steve's got stuff going on, so it's something that we pour our energy into, but it's also limited by availability. And so those are all the challenges that everybody faces, whether it's an independent book or like we have with our magazine. Fortunately, with our magazine, what we do have is it's not just us promoting it, right? It's not just us talking about here's our story or here's what we've put together. If you're interested in hearing about what Andy Smith or Peter Samedi or Billy Tucci or Dan Fraga or Mark Polton, that helps sell it. No different than any other magazine. You're hoping that some of those key feature articles branch out and bring a little bit of an audience to you. And then at the same time, the secondary benefit is anybody, the quote unquote smaller creators that are presented in it, or even the mid-level creators, again, quote unquote, like Camel. We've got a great feature in here by Camel Moon, and we've got a great article by Rob Arnold, shockingly. And when you talk about those things,
Wait,
those will
he can
draw
write?
people in. Well, I haven't seen it yet. Steve assures me that he wrote it.
Okay. All right. I mean, like, we'll take Steve's word for it, because Steve's a stand up guy. I remember the old Wizard magazine. When I first got my hands on it, I think it was because there was Spawn on the cover, and I was really going into like my 13-year-old Spawn phase. But I did find information about comic book creators and writers and other comic books and stuff that I had no idea about, and Wizard really introduced me to a deeper level of information and lore about comics, and I started to get into that culture of comic books. Is that what you're trying to capture and emulate, or even just revive in the reader base? Hopefully you'll snag somebody with interest in the cover, or maybe they know one of the names and suddenly this door will be open to them of, the indie sphere lurking just below the surface.
Well, I think one of the things that I've found over the years, the most surprising about this space and this scene is the lack of diehard comic fans. It seems to almost be everything but. Everybody has a little bit of experience with comics for the most part, but most people aren't diehard fans of the medium. And part of this is to kind of pave that path and show that there's more than just the book. We've got two great tutorials in here. One by Michael Odin, and another by Dean James. And Dean James is fantastic, I think, and I think more people your average layman will appreciate more than Michael's article. Michael's article is really going to hit the tones that, like, creators, especially writers, are looking for, because he's talking about how to write a scene, how to write a character without inducing too much melodrama, how to do something that's drama, but avoid that dreaded soap opera cliff where it just becomes almost a cliche of itself. But what Dean's doing is he's talking about how he lays out a panel. How does he do dynamic action? And I think a lot of people, not just artists, just understanding how that creation process goes through, you start looking at books in a different way when you see that. And there's, like I said, there's other things. Just getting to know a little bit about some of the people makes you a little bit more invested in them. It gives you a little bit more of that fan aspect of understanding who that creator is, not just what they're creating, but who they are. And I understand you're supposed to separate the art from the artist, but sometimes you can get a little bit of a different take on something if maybe there was a parlance that somebody slipped, and it just gives you a little bit of insight into why they did something.
So you mentioned, Odin and Dean being two of the newer creators that are featured in Rocket, along with names like, Andy Smith, Billy Tucci, Peter Samedi, who are more fixtures in the indie landscape. How do you pick who to interview and what campaigns benefit from the propulsion of your promotion?
Well, and I'm sure at first glance, when you see, Andy Smith, Peter Samedi, Billy Tucci, Dan Frega, and Mark Polton, you're thinking, well, there can't be a connection there, but there is. Everybody came to the indie scene, the indie space, indie comics in their own way, and those five kind of all kind of have a similar path. It's either it all stems from passion, number one, and number two, it's not just talent, but at some point along the way, there was a wall that was built, and they didn't try to go around it. They went right through it, and I think that kind of unites that core group. And then when we're looking at the secondary nature of the medium to smaller level, who are we going to do previews on? Who are we going to do stories on? It fits in with that as well. Thank you, Odin. I appreciate that. And that's the theme, right? If you look back at one, it was kind of the people that were on that first year and a half of who was Comicsgate. This is more of like, okay, how did you get into indie comics? It's still Comicsgatey, but it's more about indie comics and the journey. And in a lot of ways, I think issue 2 is almost a better entry issue for most people than issue 1 was, because there was a little bit of lore in issue 1 that unless you were around for, you missed. This, it's kind of from the ground up. And that's kind of our goal. With each issue, it's going to have a little bit of a different theme and a little bit of a different focus. And where that focus lay really depends on, I know when Steve and I sit down and we go, okay, who are we going to bring in? Who do we want our mastheads to be?
Yeah. So how do you scout that talent? I mean, the indie pool is enormous. I know Comicsgate is a portion of it, and there are a lot of talented creators. I mean, there's hundreds of talented creators who are in and around Comicsgate, but there's like an enormous indie pool that nobody in Comicsgate really seems to know. How do you scout the talent that's in that independent comic book creator sphere, and how often will like repeat talent be featured in the magazine?
I have an army of autists that scrounge social media, and
The best kind.
I'm
The best
partially
army.
kidding, but no, there's I get a lot of hey, check this out, or hey, look at this, and it's from all across the spectrum, no pun intended, of indie comics in general, not just CG. And so, like when we were just talking on Saturday on CG Talk, that Lord Crackhead found, or not found, but noticed Odin and Odin Dasco's work, and then was showing off some of the stuff that he was doing for Unconditional Shove. Everybody in the panel just was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" And that's how
Yeah,
you
he's
find
Broken
people.
Compass, right? He's Broken Compass Comics
Yeah,
too. They did Magnificent Bastards. Yeah.
yes, yeah. I think he partnered with James on for Broken Compass. Yes. So there's that aspect. You find guys that way, and through the benefit of CG Talk as well, and kind of getting not really name recognition, but having my quote unquote face up there. I've had a lot
The
of people,
3D glasses and your
there you go,
silhouette.
come to me and show, hey, look at this. And to be blunt, I'm a very harsh critic, and a lot of the stuff I see isn't good. I think a lot of people need to keep on pushing and keep on working harder, and everybody needs to. That's the thing I love too about indie comics, is because it is a giant market. Everybody's pushing everybody else to try to always get better, always produce a better product, and I love that aspect of it. But when we're talking about the scouting side of it, I mean, you see it; it's out there. Good art, it gravitates to the top almost always, and yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
people
we
take
do. As
notice.
far as hey Zaid, and then when you're
What's up,
talking about
Phil?
how do we determine who's going to be in it? It's discussions that Steve and I have. We talk at least once a week about, hey, what about this? What about that? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you read this? Check this out. This is be good. And it's a constant conversation. And those conversations happen over DMs. They happen on phone calls, happen in backroom chats when you've actually got the time. It's wherever you can have that conversation, where you can share that information, or share hey, look, check this out. Here's this image. Hey, here's a digital that I got. Read this. Anything you can do to bring that across.
So the first mission blasted off around this time last year with 170 backers aboard and climbed to a height of $9,000 while in demand. You're still on an upward trajectory, and there's plenty of time until you prepare for reentry. So I'm not too worried about the success of your mission, which is also, I think, a flexible goal, right? So we're getting this no matter what.
Yeah,
But
and
it
that's
seems that the previous rocket reached greater heights earlier on in its voyage. And I've seen you everywhere. You just mentioned earlier you're trying to get onto some podcasts. You're trying to like reach outside of the more localized YouTube audience. But what are you going to do? Is there like a contingency measure for you to get more eyes on this book? Do you want to put it into, say, stores? Because as a showcase or a vehicle, you know, it is a rocket, right? For new readers to become those diehard comic fans that you were talking about, this thing needs to be everywhere. How are you going to put it there?
well, and that's again, man, that's part of the challenge. One of the things that definitely needs to do happen, and right now it's small. Our focus is relatively small. Yes, we want to get as many people on it as possible, but we certainly can't. I don't have the wherewithal or the time to do any kind of a distribution thought of getting this larger than it is right now. I'd like to get it to the point where we can do 2 a year and be in the black. If we can do that, then we can talk about everything else. Until then, I need a core audience. I need to see that there is a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit of
yeah.
a
You're
demand
right.
for this.
Yep.
Especially when you're talking about, I've got a day job that I work, 60 to 70 hours a weekend that also has demands, at all hours, depending on what's going on. So when you're talking about that, I can't invest a whole lot of time unless I know something's going to be on some level, at least worth it, worth my time. So it's not
Right.
a
No,
total
you're
loss.
right. And that
But no, I
brings
mean,
me
and
to
one of
like
the,
that brings me to the question about who's getting paid. I mean, this is a ton of work. Typing, it's 120 pages, right? You got to do the layouts, the formatting. You've got a job, and creating a magazine is a job unto itself. Is this going to be generating income, or at least like perpetuating itself? Like with the articles that you've got, are any of the creators or contributors getting compensated for the stuff that they put in, or is this all you literally going and collecting this stuff and trying to make a magazine out of it? That's costly and time consuming, and it doesn't seem like it's incredibly financially rewarding. You're doing it for love of the game.
No, it is. It's a passion project. We both Steve and I would love for this to get to the point where we can pay contributors. Right now, we ask, hey, just stick with us. This is about, if you're passionate about it and you want to do something, this is it. And there's very little money in it. Now, hopefully that grows. If it doesn't, we're committed to doing at least one more issue. And if it doesn't continue to, if we don't see the growth model, if we don't see the potential there, we'll turn and we'll pivot and we'll try something else. Failure is just another lesson to learn. And I don't think this will be a failure, just like I don't think issue 1 was a failure with its 200 plus backers. And I don't think
Right,
issue 3 will be.
244 while it was in demand. I mean, like that's a significant amount of growth from 170 to 244 alone. During the downtime from last year till when you fulfilled. So there is a market out there. There is an audience. Like you said, that core audience does exist. People were interested in seeing what was within the pages of this new magazine that had Cecil as an astronaut on the cover. That's intriguing. And this magazine, I think, is even more geared. I love the cover, by the way. Like the cover speaks much more as like an indie focused cover with all of these characters that people know and can recognize, but also some that people are like, oh wait, who's that? And you open up the cover, and I'm sure that like there's like a table of contents or an index or something, and you see all of these people, some whose names are familiar, some whose aren't, and you just get steeped in that lore, like what I was saying about Wizard. So let's take a look at the book real quick. Let me see if I can do the screen share thing and not be terrible at it. I make no promises. I gotta bring this up here. So we're looking at Rocket Mission 2 right now. Tell me about the tiers. What tiers are available to everybody?
We've got one of the things that we had a little bit of feedback with on issue 1 was people were like, they digged the T-shirt and they were like, oh, do you want some more? You should have had a hat or something, and just some merch with the logo, because everybody likes the logo. It's a really good logo, and the logo was done by
Yeah, it's good.
our
Very
mutual Steve and I's mutual partner. That's probably he does a lot of work for Steve, especially on page layouts and stuff with some of the detail work. But it's 3D Robin, who's an old CGer from back in the day. Kind of an OG guy. He definitely deserves a hat tip and a name mention. But he designed the logo, so when this one launched, we wanted to do some merch for everybody. So the full payload's got issue 2 and issue 1. It's got the T-shirt with the EJ Morge's cover art on it, and then a drink koozie, keep your beer cold, and a beanie with the logo on it.
And then you've
And then
got separate tiers for just those pieces of merch, right? You've got issue 2 with the koozie, issue 2 with the beanie, issue 2 with the shirt, and what are these extras?
The extras are some. It's just some stickers. They're the 2 mission badges. The one mission badge has the 5 main names around the logo, and the other one's just kind of says Rocket Mission 2 around it. Those are they're modeled after the NASA mission badges for like the Apollo, Mercury, Gemini, and every STS mission. And it's just kind of meant as another like aspect of the kind of the play with the title and the rocket thing. They're pretty cool. We got a lot of positive feedback last time about them, so it was something that we wanted to include again.
I mean, I think that's cool. I like things that have like a motif and they stick to it, or it's a particular type of homage and they maintain that all the way through. And so, Orbit is the same thing as the featured tier. Where did it go? This up here, the full payload, except it's missing issue 1. Is issue 1 available as an add-on on this campaign?
Digital only.
Digital only. So if you want to get your physical copy of Rocket #1, you're gonna have to go with the full payload.
If you want it shipped with all of this stuff, yes. We did leave the campaign for issue 1 open, and if you want to order that, you're welcome to go right over to Rocket on Indiegogo, and you can get that today, and it'll be shipped out to you within a couple days.
So I see the pages here. I mean, I really like the layouts. They're very nice. It's a well-designed magazine. It's going to be 120 pages, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's professional. Yep. He's a professional.
20 plus years in the business. He knows what he's doing, and he's got a great eye for layout.
So as 120 pages, is this thing going to be square bound, perfect bound?
Yes, sir. Yep, issue 1 was square bound. Right? This will be square bound. We're still dancing with where exactly we want it published. Who's going to be doing the printing? But it's in process. Last time we used 3D Zach, and he's fortunately now very busy. So I'm pleased to see that. But that's kind of put us in a position where if we want to hit our deadline, we might have to find other avenues. But again, Steve's got that 20 years experience gives us a couple of options that we've got in our back pocket. So.
Right. We had a couple of people come in while we were jabber-jawing. We've got Inkfinity Comics, Alejandro VS. I think I said hello earlier to Eric Grant. Yeah, he was chatting with us earlier. We got Odin Dasco. We got Phil Diaz. We've got, who else came in earlier? Frog G's been here, I believe. I said hi to Frog G, right? And I want to make sure. Wait, where? That's well. See, this is what I need Freq Girl for. But yeah, boxes and fulfillment are important, right? So this is the article that Dean is doing, or I guess should say like what? It's not really an article, right? It's a tutorial.
It's a tutorial. This is he breaks it down, and Dean killed it. He was one of the early guys that I was really pushing Steve that I wanted in this, because I think Dean. He is the metaphorical rocket when you're talking about art transition and art growth. If you see where he was at a year ago,
he's leveled up crazy.
It is amazing.
Since Embrace 1.
I can't remember how it was long ago I saw this, and it was like a graph, and it was like how an artist views their potential growth. And it's like this steep incline and then a long plateau, and a steep incline and then a long plateau. And Dean is not doing that. It's just this meteoric vertical acceleration to orbit. And it's fantastic to see, and I was thrilled to death when I approached him, and he was excited about doing something, and then he over-delivered. We only were looking for a couple pages from him, and I think he delivered enough content that we could put this in 6 or 8. So that's why I keep on saying 120 plus. It's every time we talk to somebody and they give us something, it's always a little bit more than we asked for, and the quality's there, the content's there, and like I've still got to speak with the Barton brothers. I've got them doing a couple pages for us on kind of who are the Barton brothers, what are they going to be doing, and it's oh man, I'm anticipating they're going to exceed my page count. Thank you, Ray.
JP's killing it. Yeah, he's killing me with the jokes. Dean's transitioning has been brave and powerful. Yeah, hello to Raiden Radio. We also got Flying Feline in the chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Say hi to Death Metal Hero for me. But yeah, the level up, that's definitely something worth talking about, especially for artists. And in a comic like this, it's inspiring, right? Like you're talking to newer creators on the scene who are doing their very best to put out their best work. And you're talking to established creators who have a reputation for putting out this great work. And it's almost about learning to like bridge that and inspire writers or readers of this magazine to do that, to accelerate their work. So that inspiration is really cool. And I remember you saying Odin wrote a very emotional emotional article as well.
Yeah, well, it's an article that's talking about, how to create a character, how to institute a little bit of drama into a character so that there's life, so that they're not just two-dimensional without going off that melodrama cliff. It's kind of where his article's hitting.
Right,
And it's little things like that I think are key for just people not just understanding, but also offering their own, their own insight into a book and understanding a little bit more.
Yeah, we got some good names in here. Breaking through with the Barton brothers, Alterna's King Cryptid, JP's second volume of How to Die, Arvid's Band of the Crow. I would love to see a preview, more of a preview of the Band of the Crow. Arvid has been very selective with some of the stuff that he's shown off, and I'm hungry for more, dude. Like it looks,
yes.
His art looks so good.
No, I was thrilled when Arvid and Oren agreed to do a preview in this. I think it's really people are gonna be shocked at the quality that they're doing. It's something that's you haven't seen too much of stuff like this in this space. That is certainly for sure. It is next level.
Phil says the cover is awesome. I agree. I got to say the cover is exceptional. That is a very exciting cover. All the different rockets.
Yeah,
EJ did the cover art. Yeah, and of course Carlos did the colors. I got to fix my chair.
Yeah, EJ squeaking down. He actually directly talked to Steve, and he said, "Man, he loved the first issue, and was he going to do a second one?" And at the time, Steve said, "Well, I don't know. Are you going to do a cover for me?" And EJ said, "Absolutely." And
EJ was in the first one, wasn't he?
Yes, he had a little fan art presentation that's similar to what Camel Moon's got this time. Camel's is a little.
Is Camel Moon going to do the cover on the next one then?
I'm sure he would if we asked.
Make it a tradition.
But and that's what I can't compliment everybody that's involved in this enough. Everybody we've spoken with has just been fantastic. You've got some great stories too. Like Kier Covington was just in the fan art section of the last issue, and while it has no bearing whatsoever on his presence within Rocket One, now he's doing King Cryptid for Alterna, and that's what I like to see. I like to see that the growth. And here we are a year later, and the guy's got a gig and is doing something with his art, and that's fantastic. And if we could do more of that, if we could tell more of those stories, we'd certainly love to.
I know Peter Orchard actually caught my eye earlier this year with what he was doing that I saw on Twitter. So it's interesting to see him show up in the fan art section. I think we have got a space cadet in the back room that I'm going to bring on if he's ready. Just give me the high sign if you're ready to go. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen. We got the real Steve Dye with us. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us, Steve. How you doing?
Yeah, apologies for my tardiness, little miscommunication.
That's okay, man. Astronauts they arrive on their own schedule. We can't be mad at the stars. So I've been talking to Aldous this whole time about the magazine. I would love to hear from you a little bit about how this whole thing got going and what your inspiration behind it was. I know I've seen you around these parts actually on the show before. You were here with Vault Kobold promoting Havoc last time. What have you been up to since then?
Same stuff I was doing when I came on with Vault, building other people's books while occasionally dabbling in building my own.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was going to ask you. I mean, like, I know Aldous is preparing to create a book, and I know you've had that. Have said that before, and then you go and you create something like Rocket, which is an enormous endeavor, a huge undertaking, and it's all about propelling indie forward. And to do that, you're propelling dozens of creators, almost like making a book for them. When are you going to make yours? You know, when are you just going to release your own book?
Well, I have an idea, but yeah, it's probably pretty far off. I hope that the success of Rocket might make it a little bit more feasible for me to do that, and we're still working our way up to that level of success. So, yeah. And what's up, Phil?
Just got to say hello to Matt Barr. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we also had Arrogant Ape joined us earlier. I believe I didn't say hi, and I regret
three
my life
fantastic
choices.
gentlemen right there: Phil,
Yep.
Arrogant Ape, and Bar.
Yep, definitely. So we've been talking about you and your storied reputation in journalism and publishing. Why don't you tell us where you got your start and what brought you here today?
Well, it's a rather long story, and
I mean, we got like 20 minutes.
Story, that might be a stretch. I grew up racing motorcycles. That's how I got here. I did do a bit of a stint in school, and turned out that I had some sort of, I guess, innate ability. I don't know. It's not like I really worked at it, but I got recruited to be the editor of the school newspaper, the college newspaper, the college magazine, that sort of thing. And, got a pretty good grounding in story construction and, layout and design and all that sort of thing. At that early point, then I actually decided I don't want to really grow up yet. So I went back to racing motorcycles and did that for a good number of years, and traveling across the country, competing at various events. I met a lot of people, and those two things eventually converged to where, when my racing career was winding down, I wound up at a couple of 3 different rather high-profile magazines. First of all, helping with a little bit of riding and testing the motorcycles, and eventually wound up in charge of the damn things. And so, yeah, how did I get here? My dad, my Uncle Joe, plopped me down on a Honda Mini Trail 50 when I was like 4 years old. And then I've just been riding it along ever since.
So you went from burning rubber to burning the midnight oil, creating books and magazines about books that other people have written.
That's a pretty nice turn of phrase. Yeah.
I mean, I try.
Yeah, well done.
And we've talked to a lot of creators, illustrators, game designers on the show, but never someone who's decided to put out a magazine like this. So I heard from Aldous earlier. What is Rocket to you? Why?
Well, it's certainly. I feel like I'm going to be a little bit redundant here to everything that Aldous said, because we're both coming at it from the same standpoint, and he kind of helped me cook this thing up from the very beginning. But I have always been one of those guys that. Well, put it this way, back when DVDs were a thing, I would buy them just so that I could watch, not to get the movie, but to watch the making of documentary, and the special effects documentary. The process of creativity fascinates me as much as the final product. Along those lines, I was a big fan of heavy metal, first of all, growing up. And then later, when Wizard came out, I was pretty knocked out, because it allowed me to actually sort of know some of the creators behind a lot of the books that I've been reading, clear through childhood, teen years, and beyond. But it gave me an insight into what they were bringing to the table, what influences they had, what their processes were. And I really, really enjoyed that. You'd mix that in with a little bit of the Epic Illustrated thing. Roy Thomas's Alter Ego was a great resource for that. And all those years I was going to the comic store every Wednesday, I usually would get more excited about the new Roy Thomas magazine being out than I was of, No Man's Land from Batman. It's a close race, but so with my background, I think I would also liken it a little bit because it's on my mind. I've just talked to Camel Moon recently for his feature in the magazine. And that conversation pivoted on, his background as an animator and what he could bring to the table as an animator. And I felt like this ever-growing scene of independent comic book creators deserved its own publication that's a bit of a mashup between the Wizard and the Epic Illustrated and so forth. But I've got as has been discussed, I've got a long history of producing magazines, so I felt like that's what I could best bring to the table. And I've also been fortunate enough to work with a lot of creators along the way, some of which are very well known, which allows me some access. Some of which I hope are as well known someday, that are still kind of working their way up to it. And I just felt like it was a way that I could showcase a larger picture on certain people, while also taking some of that spotlight and shining it over here in the corner where another guy might be growing as an artist or a writer himself.
I mean, that's really admirable too, to want to do that and to try and reach out to a broader audience. Now, Aldous was saying cultivating that core audience is really what's important, and I see that with Rocket Magazine #1, Mission #1. It was kind of on the CG side of indie, and you've since sort of branched out. And I know you need to cultivate that core audience. I know you need to have readers who are reliably backing the magazine or buying the magazine in order to make the kind of income that you need to branch out. But is there like a longer term plan here? Aldous said you're definitely committed to making another one, and if it turns out that there's more income to continue the book, that you'd be interested in bringing it further out into the world. But that was the thing about Wizard showed up one day and it exploded like wildfire.
Yeah.
Heavy metal, it was already around when I found it, like when I got involved in heavy metal, like everybody already knew what it was and it was news to me. Right. I would love to see something like that for specifically indie comics, not really doing anything with the mainstream, because let them do their own promotion. Let them talk about each other in nice ways, which they won't do. Let's keep ours kind of a little bit more exclusive for creators by creators. But what would your aspiration be to bring Rocket outside of just our little pool of indie creators? How would you want to do that?
Well, it's a difficult. That's a big jump, to be honest. I mean, one of the things that has, mainstream comics aside, the traditional publishing model for periodicals has changed tremendously, and for similar reasons. There used to be a lot of newsstand space available, and there would be dozens, if not, at least dozens of different publishers represented. I don't think that Wizard could have found a space at your local Dillon's or Safeway or whatever in today's market. The newsstand rack is much smaller, and it's dominated
Newsstands
by.
Are gone for the most part. Like
Yeah,
the newsstand in Comicron, it actually last year or the year before, it stopped taking records of sales to newsstands because they had dried up so significantly as a result of COVID. No one was going to newsstands. And
I mean, there you
took its place.
Well, and Neff, it's also we're citing 3 magazines, Wizard, Heavy Metal, and Epic Illustrated, as kind of our inspirations. And it's important to note 2 of those are dead.
Yeah, dead.
And really,
the other one's not doing so great.
The husk that remains of Heavy Metal is a pale corpse of its former corpulent self. Yeah. So I don't think I get what your longing look and the sense of nostalgia, because trust me, Steve and I are right there with you. But when you're looking at, I think what this is what Rocket is it falls somewhere between like the harshness of the true underground comic movement and the mainstream. And that's kind of our goal, is to find that niche. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with the harsh underground. There's a lot of stuff down there that I really like, but it just doesn't have mainstream appeal, and that's why it's there. Right. And what Steve and I are trying to do with this is we're trying to find the best of the best of indie comics that has the most marketable appeal, that gets out there, while at the same time putting things in that we want and we think that will resonate with people that are looking for those. And that's the challenge, right? That's where Wizard failed. That's where Epic failed. And that's where heavy metal arguably is failing or has failed and is just holding on because of, what its title implies. So it's
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell your book is very streamlined and clean and appealing to the eye. I was going to ask like who did the graphic design and the layouts because it is really well presented. But that's different than that gritty underground comic stuff that you were talking about, or like the edgy indie comic stuff. You're trying to kind of elevate, or at least find the stuff that can be elevated to a more mainstream appeal. But that also means that Rocket has to reach that mainstream audience. Odin just said, I would love to see Rocket as a regular subscription. And that would definitely be a way to get around this, right? Set up that website, get orders, do a recurring subscription, charge the card once, and, just automatically charge it every month, right? To send out the new book.
Yeah, and there is some hope for that model. I contribute to a couple of magazines that are distributed that way. And there is some hope for that model, and I'd certainly like to grow it to that point. To address your other, so Odin, I'll count on you to sign up if I can ever get it there. Appreciate that, brother. As far as the design, I read a lot of zines. I'd pick up whatever if it was about comics. But I guess it comes back to bringing what I can bring to the table and what it is, where my abilities lie. And I design it. 3D Robin is my graphics guy in the sense of, well, he's one of my best sounding boards along with Aldous. Let me say that. He's a really good guy to bounce ideas off of. But 3D Robin did the Rocket logo. He did the mission badge kind of imprint thing that sits beside the logo, all the little rockets inside and some of the department headers and all of that stuff. I rely heavily on him to provide me with the assets.
The assets, yeah.
But yeah, I started off with the blank InDesign document and started, thinking about the magazines that I'd worked on and enjoyed and read, and I wanted something that was streamlined and modern and fun to look at, and that's what I'm trying to do. So it's definitely not intended to be the kind of thing that you can run off on a Xerox machine, slap it together with some staples.
Right.
Again,
my that type of quality, which means
my background is it's glossy 4-color magazines that are perfect bound, and I try not to get too bogged down in right now it's 120 pages probably plus. The circulation is only whatever the market will bear. It's safe to say that I've worked on some publications that were, granted, I had a staff and a wallet full of corporate credit cards. All of that was helpful. But, I've worked on magazines that had 250,000 circulation or 200 pages, and we did them every month. I feel like there is easily enough talent. I'm certain that there is easily enough talent. There's never room to fit in everybody that I would want to fit in any given issue. If the market will bear it, I have every confidence that I could do this on a quarterly basis. And if I could, I would like to drag it into a subscription mode, especially for some of the people that have, backed me from the beginning. So
quarterly sub is ambitious for something that's 120 pages. You would need a staff of people trying to put that together. I'm satisfied for an annual right now, like an annual retrospective on kind of what happened. Remember, like a big chunk of Wizard was the price guide, and nobody ever read that. I know I would read it in class when I was bored and imagine how much fun I would have if I had an Action Comics #1, and just like looking at all the zeros and everything. But no one really read that portion of the magazine. It was all the other stuff, all the fun articles and everything. But like a retrospective would be neat along with the rest of what's in there, the articles and the tutorials and the creator interviews and the fan art and everything. I think that would be an interesting thing to stick in there if you're only doing it once a year, because a lot happens between publications in November.
Well, to be sure. And if we only manage to grab a slice of it, Aldous and I have talked about this both privately and publicly before. It is I hope that it does serve in some small way as a history of the scene as we know it, as it's grown. that it puts some stuff literally on paper so that you can pitch it over there with your stack of wizards and keep it in perpetuity. So, I hope that in whatever way that I can kind of document the scene in any given framework of time.
Aaron Ape says, the layout is really great. I'm looking at the Malin interview right now, and there's plenty to please the eye without being confusing. I guess that's the first issue, right? I think Malin was in the first issue.
Yeah, he'd be looking at the first. And thank you for the kind words, Eric and Ape. I appreciate that.
I mean, it is a good-looking magazine, I gotta say. Like, just from the sample pages alone, I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, this is pro. And it is something that feels like it's elevating what the people that are in it, that it's elevating the stuff that they put out to a certain degree and saying, hey, it cuts the mustard, it crosses, this line, it reaches for that bar. Arrogant Ape says, Ale, you must understand Aldous is an eldritch horror. We would not be able to comprehend what we see if we saw him.
There you go.
And Odin Dasco says, quarterly would be ambitious, but yeah, very yearly retrospective would be awesome. I agree. It'd be like just a so-and-so did this year, or X appeared and made their first debut, or, such and such crossover was published. Kind of like, the history of what's going on in crowdfunding comics. And with all of the autists at Aldous's disposal and all of the information gathering techniques that they have, I'm sure, you could make a 20-page retrospective out of what happens in indie comics. So yeah, we talked for about an hour, Steve, and we already took a look at the campaign, but is there anything you want to tell our listeners about Rocket that we may not have already spoken about?
Well, beyond apologies to both the viewers and the host for my
nah, don't worry about it. It's all good.
I mean, I want to say labor of love, and I don't really like that. I'd rather, it is a product of my passion for comic books and for the creative process that goes into comic books. It's something that I put a lot of pride in, and I dare say that, it's just a matter of whatever the market will bear. Really, I never envisioned it as the kind of thing that was going to. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I will anyway. I've never had like 6-figure club aspirations or anything like that. I'd like to be modestly within the 5-figure range, and then I would like to do that in such a frequency that it would allow me to continue doing it. So that's part of the model. And yeah, it would be an undertaking to do it quarterly, but I'm not real happy that presently it's the quarterly magazine that comes out once a year. So maybe I can work my way up to biannual, and then but it all. The main thing is it all owes to what the market will bear. If there is a demand for it, if people want it, I will make more. If it turns out that people just want to buy comic books, that they're, if it is a nostalgia market, and I think in some ways it is, if that nostalgia only extends to a traditional sequential art book, then we'll reevaluate at that point. But meanwhile, we're gonna keep on cruising. Meanwhile, and yes, it is Peter Palmiotti
in demand. Yeah,
it is still in demand.
And you can get it with shipping on this campaign at the $115 tier. It's the everything bundle with a copy of Rocket #1, so you don't have to pay shipping twice. It's a really smart catch-up option.
So I did want to comment on Alex VRB's idea there. And that's a great little idea. And, Richard Corbin had an idea like that at one time about a boy that's transported into a mystical world where he becomes a warrior called Den. And without heavy metal, he never would have been able to do that story.
Yes.
So when you talk about, what is the possibility for a magazine like Rocket? The possibility for a magazine like Rocket is you get characters like Den and you can give them birth, because it's not a fully formed, fleshed out concept. It's something that you just kind of have a rough idea for. So you do 6 pages. and you put it
So
in
you
something
do
like
want to
Rocket.
do that. It's more than just interviews and tutorials. It is all those things, but you are going to be making it possible to have like the old heavy metal stuff where you would do
Absolutely.
an introduction or just like a snippet of something. Because that was the thing that I loved
Yeah,
about
yeah.
heavy metal. And then trying to put together the jigsaw puzzle that was, who is this character? Where do I find out more about them? They show up here, and then 6 issues later, I get another story about them. That was something cool about heavy metal like that.
There is already an aspect of that to it. I mean, in the first mission, in the second mission, and upcoming missions, although the long form interviews are the pivot point. Again, it's taking that spotlight and showing some other creators. So there are 2-page kind of introductory interviews with some of those guys, but that is followed by 6 or 8 pages excerpts of their campaign, whether it's upcoming or even if it's we've got Band of Crows. Is that right, Aldous? I'm drawing a quick blank here, but
Band of the Crow by Arvid, Crowfire Studios. Yeah, and it's. You got the little stories like that, and some are previews, like what you get with Raiden Radio's "How to Die" is a preview. My story is a standoff. It's something that it's just a little story I wanted to tell, just to kind of, I don't know. It's something that I wanted to add in, something that I feel that isn't there. There wasn't enough of that in one, and I kind of pitched it to Steve, and he loved it. And Crowfire's doing a preview. I'd love to see more people doing shorts and have 6 to 8 page short stories in this, because when I think back and think back to like Epic Illustrated, those are the ones that really resonate with me. When I think back to heavy metal, those are the ones that I really love.
And to finish up my thought, I have harbored I harbor the desire to actually have ongoing anthologies, but we got to establish the magazine enough to make sure that it's going to be actually ongoing, don't we? But I would love to devote 8 pages to an ongoing story that the same creator could develop over the course of, say, 4 issues, and then collect and market himself as the collected works.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that's awesome. I love the idea of doing small stories. They don't even have to be continuing, just like a sample.
Nope. Yeah. Well, we are. I mean, this one's already overflowing, and there's.
Right. It's going to be difficult because you guys must get so much material, and like you said, there's so many people that you want to talk about who are doing great work that you're gonna, you need to put out more than
difficult.
Than one.
It is no fun. Yeah. The least. I've said before, like the most fun is I get the opportunity to one-on-one. Shoot the shit with Art T. Bear, a legendary figure and somebody that, I mean, I've been buying books that he's done since, I shouldn't say since I was a kid, because Art and I are almost contemporaries. But that's the best part. The worst part easily is having to tell people that, whether I like them personally or whether I really like the project that they're working on, maybe next time, it's no fun at all. It's no fun at all. I'm trying to decide what fits, and there's a bit of, I would turn Aldous loose with this one, but there's always a bit of a theme, or has been and will continue to be a bit of a theme, so that a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. It is a bit like herding cats sometimes, but even though it's a collection of different previews, a collection of shorts, a collection of interviews, a collection of tutorials, the overriding theme will continue to be that there are any number of ways to succeed as long as you put in the work, and that everybody that is a success has their own success story, and they're usually wildly divergent from the next guys. So that's part of it as well. But yeah, we try to choose as best we can, and it is genuinely painful, even for a heartless, mean-spirited misanthrope like myself.
Like Aldous, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like myself, like Aldous, yeah. It is very, very difficult not to, to be the guy saying, "I'm sorry, sir, the inn is full tonight. You're going to have to."
He's actually like, "Yeah, that's not that hard for me."
Yeah, no, it's.
He's like, "Nah, I'm good at that." So I guess that's pretty good. Aldous, do you want to get the last word before I ask you and Steve the fateful question of the evening?
Uh, just that if you have if you have an appreciation or an interest in indie comics, what they could be, what they were, or what they are now, check us out. I think we do a really good job of both kind of hitting the nostalgia aspect of this, but also showing you things in a new frame and a new way, and in a unique way that, while it might have been done similarly, has never been done before.
Well said. That is going to be it for us tonight, guys, for the most part. If you enjoy the content, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe. I really appreciate it. You can click the bell for notifications to find out when we go live next. But I do want to ask Aldous, Steve, what is the best Western?